A whole bunch of ideas all about like understanding what people really want in the marketplace and how to connect with them.
Yeah, getting your message across.
Exactly. And in this deep dive, we really want to like pull out the gems from all of these sources and figure out, okay, how can we build something that people actually want and then tell them about it in a way that really clicks? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sources we have here, they get down to like the core principles. And when you understand those principles, you can really uh, approach your work in a totally different way.
For sure. So it's like, how do we ensure that not only are we making something that people want, but also they understand it's valuable enough to actually buy, right? That's the real goal.
Totally. It has to resonate.
Yeah. So the first big piece is actually creating something the market wants, right? Seems obvious.
Of course.
But these sources actually give us a pretty smart way to think about that. Like, where does that value come from?
Yeah, where does it come from?
Right. And a lot of it comes from, they were talking about past unmet needs and present desires.
Right. And within that, the material actually breaks down a really, I think, useful framework.
Yeah.
They talk about past perceived voids, present perceived virtues, and future perceived visions. And these aren't, just kind of abstract concepts. These are really practical tools
Right.
you can use to think about what people are actually doing and why they're making the decisions they're making.
Let's dig into that. So, past perceived voids. What is that?
Well, basically, it's like things that people felt like they lacked in the past, a problem they had or something they desired, like that. When those things aren't met, that becomes a huge area of value in the present.
Right. And they gave some really basic, fundamental examples. Like, people want to make more money. They want to lose weight. They want to find like good relationships. They want to be healthy. Like, these are, if you can tap into those needs, you're golden because those needs never go away. It's funny how long some of those things have been around like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things they highlight in the sources is how those consistent needs create, really long-term markets. So if you think about somebody who has struggled with financial insecurity their entire life, right?
Yeah.
If you could offer a solution that helps them build wealth, you're not just addressing a current worry.
Right.
You're actually fulfilling a past desire for stability.
Yeah.
And that's a much deeper, I think, motivator.
I love that. And then they talk about present perceived virtues, right? And this one's kind of interesting because it's really about, like, what does society or a particular group think is good or right or desirable?
Yeah, what's hot right now?
Yeah. And they gave the example of, like, election merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought was, like, such a perfect illustration of this.
It is, yeah.
Because, whether it's a Kamala Harris shirt or a Donald Trump hat, people bought those things because it aligned with their current values.
Exactly.
What they saw as virtuous at that moment.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think what's really interesting here is that, these perceived virtues, they shift. They evolve, they change over time. And so I think for you, listener, the question becomes, how can you stay in tune with the values of your target audience and make sure that what you're offering is really aligned with what they consider to be important right now?
Yeah.
It's not just about what's trending. It's about understanding kind of the deeper beliefs that are underneath that.
Totally. And then the last one, future perceived visions. This is about aspirations and how people think about their future, right? And how that influences their choices today.
Yeah.
So if somebody has a really clear goal of, I don't know, retiring early or building a certain kind of business, those are future perceived visions, right?
Right.
And they're more likely to invest in things now that'll help them get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about, somebody who invests in the course to learn a new skill.
Right.
Right. That's a present investment.
Right.
But it's driven by their vision of a better future.
Yep. Yeah.
A better future career or whatever it might be. And so the more you can connect your product or service to those kinds of future aspirations, the more compelling it's going to be.
Yeah. The sources actually emphasize that if you can combine all three of these, you've got a really, really powerful offer. So.
Right. It's the past, the present, and the future.
Exactly. But then they made this really interesting point, which is just having a great thing isn't enough. And I loved this in Nashville. They talked about the invention graveyard. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm not sure I have. Tell me more.
It's really this idea that there's all these brilliant ideas out there that never went anywhere.
Yeah.
Like all these amazing inventions, these amazing products that just nobody ever even heard of.
Nobody ever knew about them. Yeah.
And they just disappeared because nobody understood their worth.
Yeah.
It really made me think, like, how many awesome things are out there that we just don't even know about? Because
it never made it to market.
Yeah.
Or they didn't get the right messaging.
Exactly. And so this brings us to the second, like, really important piece, which is communication. Like, we have to be able to tell people about the value in a way that they understand, right?
Totally. And the analogy that the sources use about language barriers.
Yes. I love that one.
It's so good. You could have like the most amazing solution to a problem.
Yeah.
But if you're speaking in a language that your customers don't understand,
Yeah.
whether it's literally a different language or just, in terms of what they care about, you're not gonna get anywhere.
It's like trying to explain like cloud computing to somebody who still uses a rotary phone. Like, it's just it's not gonna compute.
Totally. And the sources, they really emphasize that poor communication can just totally kill an otherwise amazing product or service.
Oh, totally. And we can't just assume that people are gonna get why what we've created is so valuable.
Yeah. We can't assume that they'll see it the same way we do.
Yeah. And they cautioned against using all those like generic self-serving claims that everybody's heard a million times before.
Yeah, like
we're the best, or we've been in business for 100 years.
Right.
Like all that stuff.
Right. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. They care about their problems and what they desire.
Exactly.
Right. So our communication has to be like laser focused on that. Okay. So how do we actually get better at communication? Like that seems like a big kind of amorphous thing.
Right.
Right.
And the sources gave some really basic advice, but I thought it was great.
Okay. Like what?
Read more books, write more, talk more.
Yeah.
It's just about like immersing yourself in language.
Yeah. You've been becoming more skilled at expressing yourself.
And the more you do it, the better you get.
Exactly. And then not just doing it more, but doing it smarter. Right. Like they recommend all these specific books on marketing and copywriting. They had the 16-word sales letter, copywriting secrets, the Challenger sale, oversubscribed, key person of influence, boss move, like all these books that can help you understand like how to craft those really compelling messages.
Yeah, those are all classics. And I think what was really good about that part was it wasn't just about like read these books and then you're good.
Yeah.
It was like study, really pay attention to what's working, and I think the phrase they used was don't copy, model.
I love that.
Yeah. Don't just, try to do exactly what somebody else is doing.
Yeah.
But understand, like, what are the underlying principles of why it's effective? Their clarity, their empathy, how they frame their message, and then find a way to apply those things authentically.
Yes, in your own voice.
In your own voice.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times when people try to just copy somebody else, it comes off as like fake and inauthentic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, when you're modeling, what you're really doing is you're extracting the essence of their success.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is it about what they're doing that works? And then you're finding a way to adapt those elements to your own offering and your own way of communicating.
Okay. So we've got creating value, right? Yeah. And we've got communicating that value. But then there's this final piece that a lot of people struggle with, and the sources call it closing the deal. And it's basically asking for money.
Which is really where the rubber meets the road, right?
Totally. And for a lot of people, it's a huge mental block.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the sources talked about how even those early experiences that we have, like the beliefs we develop in childhood, can really play a role.
You mean an example?
Like, don't take money from strangers. Or like those awkward experiences where you try to charge your friends or family for something.
Yeah, or feeling bad about.
Yeah, and then it becomes like this weird ingrained thing where you don't want to ask for money.
Totally. Yeah. And the sources say, like, you have to recognize those limiting beliefs because if you don't, it's going to sabotage your business.
Totally. It's so interesting, right? Like those lessons from childhood that were meant to keep us safe are actually like holding us back.
Yeah, they backfire.
Yeah. And so the material gives some really concrete steps for improving our ability to close. And the first one is like, just learn to ask directly, without hedging, without feeling apologetic. Just, this is what it costs.
Just be straightforward and confident.
And the second tip is like reframe objections. So when somebody says, I'll think about it, or I need to talk to so-and-so.
Which is so common.
Yeah. It's not always a rejection. It might just be that we haven't fully convinced them or we haven't addressed all their concerns.
Right.
Right. So, how can we reframe that? And then my favorite, I love this acronym. It's WFAA. Wait for an answer.
Wait for an answer. I love that. It's so simple.
It's so simple, but so many people don't do it.
What do you mean?
They make their offer, they state their price, and then they just keep talking, you know?
Yeah. They feel this need to fill the silence.
Totally. And it's like, just be quiet.
Let it sit.
Yeah. Give the other person space to respond.
Yeah. It shows that you have confidence.
Totally. And ultimately, mastering these three things, like creating the value, communicating it effectively, and then confidently asking for the money, the sources said that that's what allows you to create your own economy,
That's a great phrase.
It's a great phrase. It's about taking control and building something that's meaningful and sustainable.
And also, being compensated for the value you provide.
Totally. All right, so to bring it all together for you, listener, we've looked at these three crucial elements of success in the marketplace. First, understanding what people value by considering those past unmet needs, present desires, and future aspirations, right? Second, learning to communicate that value really clearly and compellingly so it resonates with people. And third, overcoming any reluctance and confidently asking for that exchange of value.
And I think by focusing on those three interconnected elements, you're massively increasing the likelihood that whatever you create will resonate with the right people.
Yeah.
And they'll actually recognize it and value it enough to pay for it.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having a good idea. It's about having the skill to bring that idea to the world in a way that makes sense and makes money.
And stays out of the invention graveyard.
Okay,
so here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about your audience, right now. Who are you trying to reach? And can you pinpoint just one past perceived void, something that they've always struggled with or desired, If you can identify that, that's where the magic starts.
Absolutely. Figure out that need and then brainstorm potential solutions.
Totally. Figure out how you can create something or offer something that directly addresses that need and provides real value.
Yeah, that's where the real opportunity lies.